So it's not a world war if it just takes place in Europe. And so, as European countries were pulled into the war, because most of Asia and Africa was also under the control of Europe, well, they pulled their colonies into the war as well. And most parts of the world are going to play a role in World War One. And so, when we look at the specific role that different regions played, India is going to provide tons of troops for the British. In fact, a lot of the soldiers that fought in sub Saharan Africa and the Middle East for the British came from India. They recruited those Sepoy soldiers to serve in their armies. Colonies also provided raw materials. And so, even regions like Latin America didn't provide a lot of troops for fighting, but they did provide a lot of cash crops and raw materials for the war effort. In Asia, Japan was very opportunistic in World War One, and almost immediately when Britain enters the war, Japan is also going to join on the side of the Allies. And they had hoped to gain territory for helping the Allies, specifically German territories that they controlled in East Asia and the Pacific. And so they began attacking these territories and take over German territory in East Asia. Secretly, Japan also hoped to increase their influence in China. And they send a list of 21 demands to China that basically would have turned China into a Japanese protectorate. However, Britain steps in and prevents Japan from basically taking control of China. In sub-Saharan Africa, because pretty much all of Africa was under European control, the fighting is going to spill over into those colonies as well. And Germany had several large territories in sub-Saharan Africa. And Germany is going to recruit soldiers from their territories in Africa to help defend those regions. And the fighting really continued in sub-Saharan Africa over these German territories for the duration of the war. Most of those territories, some of them held out all the way down to the last couple of weeks of the war. And so direct fighting is going to take place in sub-Saharan Africa as Britain and France tried to take control of German colonies in sub-Saharan Africa. Many soldiers were recruited on both sides. Many died not just from the fighting, but also diseases in Africa as well. In the Middle East, the fighting is going to spill over into the Middle East as well. And Britain is going to recruit Arab soldiers to help fight against the Ottomans. And the Arabs agree because Britain promised them self-rule after the war. And so the Arabs join in and help the British fight against the Ottomans. One of the key battles in the Middle East was the Battle of Gallipoli. This was a battle overseen by the British, but it was mostly fought by New Zealand, Australian, and Canadian troops. Britain recruited troops from their white dominions and used them in this battle especially. And the battle was a complete disaster. Over 250,000 casualties on each side. And as a result, it kind of weakened some of the loyalty between Britain and these dominions. In fact, it's celebrated as a national holiday in Australia. And so it kind of weakened those ties a little bit when all of these soldiers from these colonies of Britain were killed in this disaster of a battle. After the Battle of Gallipoli, though, gradually the Ottomans began to lose territory, especially from Russia. Russia pushes into the Ottoman territory and takes territory around the Caucasus. It's also within the Ottoman Empire that we have one of our first big genocides of the 20th century. The Armenian Holocaust was the killing of over 1 million of these Armenians that were in the Ottoman Empire. So the Armenians were a Christian minority that before the war were actually pushing for independence from the Ottomans. And during the war, they become scapegoats. And the Turks begin to blame the Armenians for their losses in the war. And so over 1 million Armenians are killed, and many others are forced to flee to Russia and the Middle East.